Good morning, everybody, and Shabbat Shalom to the 12 tribes of Israel scattered abroad and believers in Yeshua Messiah. Again, Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on this Sabbath morning. I hope you're having a good one wherever you are watching from. If you're tuning in, don't forget to give us a shout out, give us a thumbs up, join the conversation today. You can do it in the live chat section, or if you check this out a little bit later, you can certainly drop us a comment. We'll do our best to get back to you. Questions, comments, all of that stuff is welcome, whether it's on YouTube or it's on Facebook. Make sure that you are subscribed and that you hit the little bell so that you're notified every time that we go live. So with all those kind of commercials out of the way, let me invite my dear brother Max, man. How are you, bro? Let's see. There he is.
What's up, brother? Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
And just a reference point, just for the past couple of weeks, whoever's been giving us that thumbs down, we still love you.
I'll let Karen know.
Oh, I thought it was Amy.
No, that's funny. Who knows? That's fine. Listen,
see ya.
Yeah, listen. Everybody's got an opinion. That's all right. I got no problem with that.
That's all. We don't care.
Isn't that the way? Isn't that the way it's supposed to be in America?
That's right.
I
want to give us a thumbs down sometimes too. Who cares, right?
Yeah, hey, everybody gets a thumbs down every once in a while. That's all right. Listen, we got some. There's some, divisive stuff going on in our country, and there's, people on both sides of the issue, and I don't understand it all. It's kind of nuts what's going on. All over the place. My heart, just goes out to all of those families of the servicemen that were killed this week in that explosion, suicide bombing in Afghanistan. And I mean, I know it was 12 Marines, I think, and one Navy corpsman. 13 altogether.
13 altogether.
But I mean, there was like 120 Afghanis that were slaughtered. And I think something like 200 of them, sent to the hospital. I'm sure unfortunately, the death rate will go up because of that. And
I'm sure we're not even hearing the real totals either.
Yeah. I saw a thing on Tucker. Tucker had a father of one of the soldiers, and oh man, I was crying watching it. I mean, my heart was broken for them. So definitely our prayers go out to all of the servicemen and all the families that have been affected by this. And things are just it's not going to get better, because I know that we're pulling out already. It's going to be it is a mess. It's been a mess. It is a mess.
Big mess.
Big mess. And we would be remiss this morning if we do not mention and say a prayer, and our hearts and a prayer should go out to all the people in Louisiana who are facing Hurricane Ida. That's kind of funny. The hurricane's funny, but its name is Ida.
Inside joke.
Inside joke. It's my mother-in-law's name, so everyone gets that. I know I'll probably get in trouble. I didn't mean that in a bad way, but I'll get in trouble. I'll get a thumbs down for that one, I'm sure. But we all. You think Louisiana, of course.
I lost you, bro.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me, bro? I got you. But I'm sorry. We're having a little bit of audio issues here. Just give us a second.
Hey, there we go.
You got me back on?
Yeah, I got you.
All right. I was just saying
we're doing a little bit of a rig today.
Yeah, a little bit of jury rig today, but that's all right. But I was just saying that, when you think of Louisiana, of course, the first thing you think of is Hurricane Gloria and all the mess that
when we were
came
on
out
Long Island. Remember that? Yeah,
I remember that. Oh, no, not Gloria. Well, it wasn't Gloria that hit Louisiana. I can't remember the name of the hurricane.
Irma was, I know, the big one.
Yeah. I mean, just, flooded the whole place out, blew out the levees. If anybody remembers the name of that hurricane, you can put it in the comment. But, so that's sort of the picture that is in your mind. And these people still really haven't. There's parts of Louisiana that haven't even recovered from that yet.
Yeah, it's true.
It's true. So now they're bearing down. I think right now it's supposed to be a Category 4. So
wow.
It's
I didn't even realize that. My wife's sister lives there. Amy's sister lives there.
Oh wow. Well, I hope the best for them. So lots going on in our world, not to mention what's going on all around the world and the craziness and all of that kind of stuff. And in the midst of all of this, what we wanted to kind of touch on a little bit for today in our conversation is we wanted to talk about the promises of God. Because and I hear this, I certainly hear this a lot. Katrina. Oh, somebody sent it out. Oh, Sister Laura sent it out to us. Katrina. Yes, it was Katrina. How do you forget Katrina? That was going to bother me. Right? I know it was going to bother me the whole time. But, the promises of God. What I think we have all begun to realize, I hope we have all begun to realize as we have walked in faith, as our eyes have been opened to a new element of our faith. Because, we loved the Lord. We were trying to walk with him, and he knew that, and he's pulled us and he's brought us on a journey to get us here. But one of the things that I've realized, and again, I hope everybody has realized, is there was a lot, and by a lot, I mean like, and maybe I'm being, a little overblown here, but I'm gonna say like 85, 90% of what we thought was just not so. Or it wasn't or it wasn't the way we thought it. We believed things, we understood things that were just sort of passed down to us.
85%.
You think that's a fair estimate? And part of the process of what we're experiencing now, just like Shaul, and I mean his example is sort of the epitome of what a not a conversion, but a real repentance looks like. Because that man in from the time that Yeshua meets him on the road, right, to Damascus, he's going to do some horrible things, and yet everything he's doing up to that point, all of his education, the most educated guy, in biblical things, and not just biblical things, educated in secular university, educated in languages, educated in the Torah, educated in the Pharisaic law. This guy was a PhD, all sorts of letters after his name, most holy reverend, rabbi, I mean, just et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he thought what he was doing was right. Right?
That's right.
I mean, he thought, go ahead.
No, it's just a funny point, but I wonder if that's where they get the terminology to knock you off your high horse.
Yeah, was he on a horse?
Well, I know he was on a horse, but still.
I get it.
That reference point,
I get that, knock you off your high horse. But so he thinks everything he's doing is right. And he's lived his whole life this way. This is what the established religion of his day was, right? And so... And now he has this experience with Yeshua. He's blinded, and in those 3 days before Ananias comes to him and the scales fall off, which I think is all analogous. I think that's all Yah trying to give us a picture of what's going on the inside of him. He had to realize he was blind.
Yeah.
And in those 3 days, he had to wrestle with
3 days, I'm sure.
Oh, my goodness. Could you imagine that? A long 3 days. Never knowing if
not knowing when it was going to end.
When it was going to end. And he had to come to grips with everything. Not even, let's not even say, let's say 85%. But generally speaking, everything he thought and believed was wrong.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a deep thought. That's a scary thought. And yet that is the process when we really do begin to understand who he is versus, kind of the religious belief that has sort of been passed down to us, to our nation, to our culture, from nation to nation over the last almost 2,000 years. It's a tough thing to all of a sudden wake up and say, or it's a life-changing event. And I have, and I'm hoping everybody kind of gets this, that we're realizing a lot of the things we were told are just not the way we were told them. And and you have to rethink, you have to reevaluate yourself. And I think I have my personal opinion, this is just me. I think that the people who are really called, the people who really, really hear his voice
Hmm.
are the type of people that are willing to reevaluate themselves.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because they say there's a statistic that once, whether it's church or your nation, once you learn a certain way, even when you hear the opposite, you're still going to be set in that way. You're not going to
Yeah.
change your thought.
Yeah, yeah. I forgot what the psychological term was, but I know there was a
Hmm.
study done by the Barna Group, which
Hmm.
is a big sort of a statistical group that does things within Christendom, and
Hmm.
this was maybe, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. One of the statistics that they came out with was that better than 90% of all Christians are
Hmm.
unwilling to reevaluate their faith. That even
Yeah.
if they hear something that is in opposition and sounds good, are unwilling to change their positions from whatever it is that they first heard in the beginning.
Yeah, and it goes even across the board. When I read something similar to that, it even says even doctors, what
Yeah,
they've learned in medical
yeah.
school when
I
new
think
science,
this is
they're
across the
like,
board for
nope,
everything.
nope,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's not just
everything.
Christianity. It's
I
us
think it's just
too.
the way but yeah, just
Yeah.
human.
That biased that comes
Yeah,
that is within us. That no,
yep,
this is how I heard it. This is how I.
yep.
And
This is how
we
I was taught it. That's it.
how many times have we heard I know I've heard it from my own family members. I was born this, or this is my
Say it,
religion.
say it.
I, I was born Catholic
Yeah,
or Christian or whatever or Methodist, and I'm going to die that
yeah. In the
way.
New York City area, it's predominantly Catholic, right? That's the
Yeah.
term you always hear,
Yeah,
right?
I've listen. I remember hearing stuff like that from my own family,
Mm-hmm.
extended family members. We're born this way. This is the way we're going to die, and
Mm-hmm.
and so that inability, and think of how devastating this really is. Just in everyday life, how detrimental this is. If you're
Mm-hmm.
not willing to, as you grow and learn, reevaluate your stuff, and if you're doing something wrong,
Mm-hmm.
you would think that the logical, intellectual thing to do would be to say, okay, I'm not doing this wrong. This doesn't make sense. Now that I
Mm-hmm.
understand the bigger picture, let me adjust myself
Mm-hmm.
to whatever is right and good and correct. But
Mm-hmm.
many, as you said, many people, or there's few people that are willing to critically think and
Mm-hmm.
evaluate themselves that way. And I
Yeah,
think,
I think we're even seeing that on our everyday news right in front of us. We're
yeah,
seeing one thing going on, and now the leader of a certain nation, well, I want to, will still say it was nothing wrong with what we did. We did it perfect,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yep.
Because they can't admit, or change their ways, you know.
But I mean, now we've kind of gotten to the point where not only is there this bias, normalcy bias, I guess is, I don't know if that's the right term, but now we're at the point where we won't even listen
Mm,
to any opposing thought. We're unwilling to even entertain the idea or have the discussion
you're
uh,
right. You're right.
of something other than what the given truth is.
Mm-hmm.
But
That's right.
I sincerely believe that many people who are now truly coming to having their eyes open and beginning to walk in obedience to God's instruction
Mm-hmm.
are that small percentage of people that both in their secular life and in their spiritual life are thinkers, are people
Yeah,
that are willing to
and
say,
it's so
wait a
funny.
minute.
Yah even tells us to not dismiss it until you hear the whole matter. You
Yeah,
know.
great verse. Great verse. Let's
Mm-hmm.
let's discuss the whole matter. Or other verses of Revelation. Behold, I stand at the door and I knock. Right?
Yep. Yep.
Open up to me. Let me come in, and we will sup together. And sup together, yeah, it means to
Mm-hmm.
eat together, but it really means is to fellowship, to
Mm-hmm.
talk. Let's
Yeah,
let's
even in Isaiah,
reason.
when it says, "Let's reason together," right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Let's
it's like
reason
you're
this
gonna
thing
reason.
out.
Okay, wow, that's an amazing verse. Thinking about that,
That
Yah
is.
is one, was willing to say, "Let's reason." Wow.
That he's willing to reason this out with us and present us with the story, the information, and then we got to make up our mind. And we
Mm-hmm.
all we got to make up our mind now and what's going on in our culture. We got to make up our mind.
Yep.
And so,
Yep.
but getting back to the idea that, Shaul or Saul, what a revelation that everything you believed was incorrect in some way. And obviously not everything he believed. There was some stuff that was definitely true, that was consistent all the way through. But like we said, maybe 85% of man-made religion, or the way men think, what we find out is incorrect. And that goes to, or speaks to, the promises of God. Because I don't know about you, but I remember for all my time in ministry over the years, how many of those little devotional books did you see or buy that said the promises of God? These are the promises of God for you. Yeah. And you buy them and you stick them on your kitchen table, or we put them in the bathroom, right? Yeah. and when you went to the restroom, you spent a minute or two and you read about the promises of God, and you thought, oh boy, this is...
Just to elaborate on that real fast, this isn't a plug for a store, but there's a store called Ollie's. And
I like that store.
Right? It's a pretty cool store, but in there is a huge book section, and they have this one, I want to say 10-foot section where it's all just, Christian books. And that's like the title of like almost every book, The Promises of God, how to get the promises, the promise, and on the front cover, it's these wolves, you're like, it's horrible.
Yep. And it's the same characters. You're right. I can't even remember all their names, but you guys know them, everyone that's out there. And they benefit off of, and they're teaching people to believe that something is theirs, that Yah has given a promise to them.
Name it and claim it, yeah.
Yeah, it goes along with the name it and claim it, but it goes even much deeper than just name it and claim it, because it has evolved into a cultural thing. Because it's not just for individuals and church ministries that say, yeah, you can name it and claim it, all these promises are for you. We think that as a nation. As a nation, we say, well, God bless America. This, God's for us. And man, when you really start to understand what's actually being said,
try to use that.
Tell me one that hasn't. Well, maybe
God is for us.
Yeah,
going to be against.
Yeah. God is for us. Who can be against us? I remember the Vice President Pence, using that Chronicles, if my people, which are called by my name, and it was phony. It's phony. It's empty, and yet people were like, yeah. And I know we're going to step on toes with this one.
Said?
Yeah, right. No, he's a believer. He's for God, and so we think that we have been taught that these are promises that are given to Americans. These are promises that are given to Christians. These are promises that are given to people who believe. And when you actually begin to read the promises and what they are actually about, like Shaul, the scales should begin to come off of your eyes and realize it's not a blanket statement. This is not Yah just, throwing out promises and seeing where it sticks. It's like, oh, this is for everybody. Just go ahead and do all that. The truth is very, 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 very different. And so I thought maybe as an introductory, let's look at Romans chapter, Romans chapter 3. I'm sorry, Romans chapter 3. And let me just get here on the computer so that we can look at this. Because, when you talk about the promises of God, immediately, and like you said, you go to all the bookstores. I went to CVS a couple of days ago, and you're right, I saw the whole bookshelf, and every single one was like, the promises of God for men, the promises of God for women.
They break it down to
to gender, and it's to sell a book. But let's look at the actual some of the things that are given to us in the scripture concerning the promises. This is Romans chapter 3 and verses 1 and 2. Now, we discussed this in the book of Romans, so I'm just going to make a quick mention here, but I want you to see he's talking about what's the benefit then, because he's talking about faith is now coming to the Gentiles, right? Gentiles' eyes are opening up. He told us about what the Jews should have been doing. They should have been witnesses. They should have been given the testimony, right?
Yep.
And then he asks us the question in chapter 3 and verse 1. So, if those who were given all this information have sort of turned their back on it or aren't getting it or didn't do it, then what advantage then? Why pick the Jews? And it's not just the Jews, it's the house of Israel. But in his case, what advantage, verse 1 says, what then is the advantage of the Jew? Or what value is circumcision? So because he's talking about, how they made circumcision something it wasn't supposed to be. And verse 2, much in every way. And I don't know, how could we say that in maybe a more 21st century way? Every single thing mentioned. Everything. Every single thing mentioned. Much in every way. Let me see. Much in every way. It says, because firstly, indeed, that they were entrusted with the words of Elohim. Right? Yep. That's the first thing. So who was entrusted with the words of Elohim? Who were these promises given to?
That's right.
They were given to the house of Israel. And that's that's a really, really important point. But it is connected to another thing that Shaul says, this time directly about the promises, and this comes from the book of Ephesians. And let me get there real quick. Book of Ephesians and chapter 2. And this should be familiar, to us. We've talked about this before, starting around verse 11 or so. And let me highlight this for everybody. Oh, sorry, go down a little bit. From verses 11 through 13, listen to what it says here. Therefore, remember that you, once nations, and of course he means Gentiles, right? You are the Gentiles, in the flesh. So he's talking about people who are not Jews. We just read in Romans, what's the advantage being a Jew? Everything was given to you. All the promises were given to you, all of them. Therefore, remember that you once nations in the flesh who are called the uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision. He's talking about Jews, Gentiles, by circumcision made in the flesh by hands. And verse 12.
Slang terms, right?
Yeah, slang. It's also kind of ethnic.
Derogatory. Yeah,
it's derogatory. They're ethnic slurs. And same. Remember when King David fights Goliath, right?
Yeah.
If you read the account, it says he comes out and he starts cursing at Goliath. You blankety blank 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 uncircumcised blankety blank uncircumcised. Those are derogatory, and I understand why David said it.
Oh yeah.
But that's kind of where it comes from.
Very funny.
Let me just check out something here. Sorry, guys. All right. So here's verse 11. Therefore, remember verse 12. At that time, you were without Messiah, excluded from the citizenship of Israel, and strangers from the covenants of, here it is, promise. He's talking about all the promises of the scripture.
Yep,
Abraham, from Adam, all of it. Yeah. All of it, right? You were excluded from the promises. And strangers from the covenants of promise, having no expectation, and without Elohim in the world. But now in Messiah, Yeshua, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of Messiah. So the concept and the idea is promises were never even mentioned, associated with, given to the nations. It was given to the nation, right? But now
you showed some pretty cool pictures on Wednesday with the grafted, with the cultivated.
Oh, wasn't it?
Was that Wednesday?
Yeah, wasn't that neat? The whole Zion,
cool.
The whole Zion thing. Yeah, that was so now we're grafted in. So now the promises come to us. Okay, great. people would then say, well, there it is. It says now all of those promises that were promises are now our promises. And that's not what it says.
Nope.
It says you were once strangers. You were not citizens of the house of Israel. But now, and this is like verse 19 in chapter 2 as well. If you go on reading, it says, now you are citizens. Now you are no longer strangers. Well, citizens of what? Citizens of the house of Israel. So technically, and not even technically, literally, who are these promises given to? Forever.
Yeah.
To the house of Israel. And everyone who is grafted into the house of Israel.
Exactly.
That's not what we're told, man. That was not what we were told. That's not how it's come down to us. There is no book that says these are God's promises for men and these are God's promises for women. These are God's promises for married couples. This is God's promise for America. That's not what it says. And yet,
and I think we can all testify. And if you have social media, which I don't, but if you look on Facebook, and I remember during the height of this thing that's out there affecting us all, the COVID, but people were putting, all these promises in scripture on the thing. And then the next day, these same people that put these posts would have, a witch, happy Halloween, or, just nonsense that just shows you, what,
And listen, I don't deny the fact that reading some of those things are comforting. If you believe that they apply to you, they can be comforting. But the question here is, do they actually apply?
That's right.
Is that given to you? Are you in the category of people to which Yah is speaking about? Or are you outside of that category, and here it is, trying to usurp what was given to the house of Israel and take it or give it to some other group, some other people? And that's that's exactly what we have done. So we're gonna talk about a couple of the promises, and some of the basic ones, some of the ones that people like to quote a lot and talk about a lot. And again, you got to think about this critically. You got to think about this whole thing, and if we're on the wrong side of this, or if we're not understanding it correctly, are you willing to rethink this thing and relook at it and say, wait a minute,
because there's a criteria that's involved. Yeah, there's something else that we have to do on our behalf.
There is, and people don't. I know we don't like that idea, because what we're told all the time, and I don't mean this in the wrong way. I'm not looking to offend. But we say all the time, well, God just loves everybody. This is just, and Yah does love the world so much that he gave his son. But if you don't come through the son and come through the way that he's prescribed, I think it is. I'm trying to think.
Says that you're a robber if you don't.
Yeah, you're a thief and a robber. There you go. You're a thief and you're a robber. And of course, he was talking about the religionist of his day. You are a thief and you are a robber. If you're not part of the way Yah has set up, you're outside of it. Yeah, and I forgot who I was talking to. Oh, you know what?
Doesn't matter how you think. Yeah.
I was talking to Brother Che this week, and I want to give Brother Che a shout out there. He's recovering in Florida, just starting his PT work, and we want to give him a shout out and ask everybody to please pray for Brother Che. He's just starting his physical therapy, so starting to get into all that stuff, and we're just believing strength for him. And I told him we're gonna, maybe I'm gonna send him the audio of Rocky or Eye of the Tiger or something while he's working out. And so more power to you, brother. We're rooting for you, and I want everybody out there to root for Brother Che as well.
That's right.
But I think he asked me. We got into a conversation about is Yah, how can Yah just destroy, or how will he wipe out? Would he actually do that and wipe out nations? And the answer is yes. And he's done it before, and I think the example of Jerusalem is primary to us, because if he did it to Jerusalem, if he did what he did to Jerusalem, and that's A lot of what Yeshua talks about in the Gospels is the destruction of Jerusalem. If he's willing to do that because they did not come the right way, what do you think he's going to do to the rest of the world? What do you think he's going to? Why do the nations rage and imagine a vain thing? Right? He's gonna destroy them with a rod of iron. He's gonna smash them to pieces like a potter's clay. And but we're told, sort of the promise to everybody is, but God loves us. Well, he does, and he gave us a way. But if you refuse that way, you're not walking in the love of God anymore.
That's right.
You are now walking. Actually, we were all walking in the wrath of God to begin with.
That's right. That's right.
And I believe.
As soon as you said that, what keeps on coming to my head was Psalms 48, Jerusalem, the city that bears his name. You know?
And if he did it there, what chance do unrighteous nations all over this world, especially if we're usurping his promises and presenting this idea that this is who God is, and it's not. And I think one of the analogies we gave them, and it's also the analogy Yeshua uses in the parable of the wheat and the tares. There's wheat, and there's tares, and he says, and he tells us when he sends let them both grow together. When he sends his angels, he will take those tares, he will bind them up, and he will burn them in the furnace. And I don't mean this in a bad way. I'm not trying to offend, but God will give not even a second thought to doing it. It will be like the description. I forgot what verse it is that tells us the nations are but dust to him. And so that's a heavy thought.
Yeah, me and you were talking the other day, even in as a Jeremiah, when he's talking to when he hated their feast days. And did he hate the feast days? No, because they did it with uncircumcised hearts. They were just doing it religiously, and it was an abomination, so that's something that's a heavy to think about, man.
Yeah, it's a terrible thing to fall into the hands of an angry God.
That's right.
And so anyway, so with the promises, let's talk about a couple of the promises. 1 John chapter 3 verses 21 through 24 is a really good one. We hear this very, very often. So let me actually get there here, and let's take a look at that. That's 1 John for everybody out there, chapter 3, if you've got your own Bibles, and verses 21 through 24. And let me highlight this, and let's pop it up here. Okay, so here we go. Sorry, I got them. Beloved ones, verse 21. If our heart does not condemn us, we have boldness toward Elohim, and whatever we ask, we receive from him. Let's just stop right there for a second. How many times have you heard that?
Yep.
How many times has that been preached from pulpit after pulpit after pulpit, in every devotional book? 9
times out of 10. And what are they asking of him?
That's actually, there's another verse that deals with
James,
that.
James
in particular. That, But you're right. And yet we hear this all the time, that if you believe, whatever you ask of him, you will receive. Now let's be honest, guys. I mean, let's critically think here. Who has that ever happened to before?
Yeah. I've never seen anyone in person.
It didn't happen to me. Everything I asked for, I didn't get. I didn't understand what this meant. I didn't understand what the promise truly was. I just understood what I was being told. You're in the Lord. You ask what you want, and he will do it. But that's not what this says. And whatever we ask, we receive of him, because we guard his commandments and do what is pleasing in his sight. Now, this is, I want to separate the issue of being made right in Yah's eyes, which is absolutely an issue of faith. It is believing what Yeshua has done, that he is the God of Mount Sinai, come in the flesh. All right? You believe that?
Yep.
Phenomenal. You now have you now have the possibility of having the scales fall from your eyes. Now you should begin realizing, wait a minute.
Now there's a duty that we have to do though too.
Now
right?
there's a responsibility on my side. So if this is a promise, and this isn't the only place this promise is given. This is given in multiple. Yeshua talks about this, but John makes it very, very clear that this side of it. I'm not just talking about understanding who he is and repenting. That's the first issue. Then you begin to grow and learn. When you ask, if you guard his commands and do what is pleasing in his sight, what it's actually saying is if you do those things, then you can ask.
That's right.
That's very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
And this is his command, that we should believe in the name of his son. All right, so he's telling us, listen, this is the first step. This is what you got to do. Here's the first step. We should believe in his son, Yeshua Messiah, and love one another as he gave us command. And the one guarding his commandments stays in him, and he in him. And by this we know that he stays in us by the Spirit which he gave us.
Yeah.
So the promises are not just a blanket statement. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, I just want to say he's referencing too Deuteronomy 6:25, right? It says, "Then it will be righteousness for us if we are careful to observe all the commandments before Yehovah our Elohim as he has commanded us."
Yeah, same verse. He's saying the same exact thing, right? As you got, what is that? Deuteronomy 4?
Deuteronomy 6
or 6?
6:20.
6:20 something. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. This is a parallel verse to that. He's just kind of re-quoting it, saying it a little bit differently, but he's saying the same thing. Do righteousness, and all of these things come to you. What Judah messed up is they thought doing righteousness is what made them right before God. But he told us this is the command. First you believe, first be in right standing. Then what you do absolutely matters. So here, this promise, and we see this in multiple places. I think Yeshua mentions it in John chapter 15. Let me get there. And let's see,
verse 7.
There's the whole chapter is pretty incredible. But yeah, John chapter 15, and let me pop this up. And here's verse 7.
It's on 6, I think, right? 6 looks good. I'm trying to look on the computer. It's like the size of a pepper flake.
All right, here's verse 6. It says, "If anyone does not stay in me, he is thrown away as a branch," which is, kind of what we were just talking about. I was saying when the conversation we were having with Brother Che. And there's another verse that speaks to that. And it's not in our canon. It's in the book of Esdras. And I've kind of stayed away from really kind of quoting and using those other books. They're very interesting to read. You should read them. You should understand. I've tried to, as of, I don't know, maybe the last 6-8 months, tried to stay just in the canon, because honestly, there's so much to understand there. But because I've read some things, there are some that that try to date the book of Esdras as being a book written after the return to Jerusalem from Babylon by Ezra, and there's evidence and people that believe that, but there's other evidence that historic. And again, you got to who do you trust? But historically, I say, well, actually, this was written sometime in the 1st century, and to me, if it was written in the 1st century, it makes it an even more amazing book. It would be an amazing book if it was written by Ezra, by the same Ezra, in after the Babylonian captivity, because when you read Esdras, it's the book of Matthew in order of the book of Matthew, right? But it explains some other things in greater detail. than even the book of Matthew. So if it was a prophecy written 400 or 500 years before Yeshua came, man, that's mind-boggling, right? Because Esdras opens up with, I want to gather you together as a mother hen gathers her chicks, but you would not, so you're going to be scattered.
Quoting script,
right? It opens up with the words of Matthew. So if it was written in the time of Ezra, phenomenal. It's the prophecies are mind-boggling, and then it means then Yeshua literally quoted that book as he went along. All right, that's the one possibility. The other possibility is if it's written in the 1st century, then what this is a window into what the 1st century people believed and were teaching, right? Because then Esdras is not prophesying and Yeshua following Esdras. Esdras is following Yeshua.
Yeah, the account,
and giving us the account and giving us some more detail into it as to what was going on in 1st century thinking. And one of the things, of course, it says in Esdras is that when Messiah comes, the nations will be fighting against each other, but then they turn their gaze away from killing each other. Something appears in the sky that they now fight against that, which that's pretty mind-boggling in and of itself. But the whole idea of casting the branches into the furnace in Esdras, and I don't remember what chapter. Somebody can look this up for me if you've got it. But he asks the question about the nations. How can you destroy them? How could you send people away? And the answer that's given, which is similar to the answer that we just saw Yeshua say about taking the branches and putting them in the furnace. He says, think of it like a grape field or some field of crops. And there's a bunch of grapes that are luscious and the way they're supposed to be, and they've got the fruit, and all of the other grapes are rotten. And he says, and the farmer, and I'm paraphrasing here, guys.
Yeah.
The farmer would not think twice about destroying, burning, getting rid of all of the rotten fruit. It wouldn't even be a thought. Of course, I'm going to do that. But his gaze would be upon that small group, right? The fruit that is good. That's a deep thought, and that's not the way we think of God. That's not the way that it has been, brought down to us. That He is not going to give a second thought to what needs to be done, right? Weeping, wailing, gnashing, all of that can go on. It's not going to faze Him, but His gaze is going to be on that fruit, and that's what Yeshua is actually saying here in John 15. If anyone stays in me, if anyone does not stay in me, verse 6. Let me just highlight it so everybody knows where we are. If anyone does not stay in me, he is thrown away as a branch and dries up. And they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. If you stay in me, and my words stay in you. Well, you got to define that, right? What does it mean to stay in Him and His words stay in you? Well, we just read in 1 John what that means. To guard His commandments.
Yeah.
So if you stay in me and my words stay in you, he's actually, I guess First John is actually quoting Yeshua here. You shall ask whatever you wish, and it shall be done for you. And even that, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think we're just used to reading it like in the New King James that they use the word abide. You abide in me. Right,
abide, which is same language. Means the same thing. Ask whatever you wish, and it shall be done for you. And I would really, I don't have it up, and maybe I should. Maybe in the future we'll get the once all the Hebrew Gospels are out, and I know some of them we could put up Matthew in book form. I would really be interested to see what Yeshua actually said, because the implication of this in English is ask whatever you wish. Now, I've been in Yah long enough to know that in my practical life, that it doesn't work out that way. You can't just ask God whatever you wish. He's not a genie, right? This is not about rubbing a lamp. This is not about getting your greatest desire. I think the key to this is abiding in him.
Yeah.
Because if you abide in him and you're doing what he's asked you to do, I think that modifies what you ask. It's not what you wish.
When as soon as you said that, I would love to read it in the Hebrew. I just want to give a quick shout out to Jesse and Sean. I was talking to them the other day, and when they were reading Mark 8 in Yeshua, in the scriptures version even says, take up your cross.
Yeah.
They did a little bit of work in that, and they looked in the Hebrew, and he says to pick up your warf and woof, I believe it is.
Yeah.
And when it's literally your tent, your fabric. So Yeshua is literally saying to pick up your tent, and it's referencing, in the Torah, whenever the pillar would move, they would pick up their tent and follow Yah. So Yeshua is using the same reference.
Yeah, that was a cool, great catch for them. Awesome.
Yeah, man.
Both Jesse and Sean, awesome catch. They shared that with me too. I read it. Mind-blowing verse. And again, it has to do with, reading it in the English or even the Greek, which came, 300 years later versus what was actually said. And you realize what was actually said is different, and it makes more sense.
Because a lot of people are still like, oh, what's the difference? It's just a Greek translation. No, it means
that's a big difference. That means a Greek scribe somewhere after 325 AD, at the time that Rome makes the cross the symbol of Christianity,
exactly.
Changes the language and puts in there, take up your cross. Well, okay, why do that? Because it emphasizes a point. It's bias. It shows a belief rather than just taking what was actually said.
Exactly.
But it makes so much more sense because when you look at those let me just put a side by side here. When you read the rest of that account in Mark, and it's in a couple of other places too, that's where the guy says, "I'll follow you, but let me go and bury my father," right? And he says, let the dead bury the dead. Follow me. The Son of Man has no place to lay his head. That's that. So the whole context there is to follow me. And I believe that all of that discussion, that event occurs during the season of Tabernacles, which would make crazy sense, right? If you're abiding in him and you read that, you're like, wait a minute, this is a conversation at Tabernacles. This is, I think, right after we'll make a booth for you. We'll make a booth for Elijah, for Moses, Peter, right? Yeah. We'll make a tabernacle, a tent. So the construct of it, or the context of it, is this is happening in tabernacle season. So why wouldn't Yeshua, as he has done many other times in the scripture, during the Moedim, use it as a teaching lesson? So follow me, follow me, follow me. Why would he use before he ever even went to the cross? Yeah. And the cross is a dark thing in the first century. Yeah. I mean, that's the electric chair.
The worship of and plus it's the worship of Tammuz. So why would he,
on top of it all? Why would he tell us to pick up a pagan Roman symbol?
That he says not to have any symbol.
That the God of Mount Sinai is now telling us to take up a pagan Roman symbol. That is, man, if that's true, then the whole universe needs to fall apart. Because Yah is totally contradicting himself, and he doesn't, but men do, and so it just makes more sense.
That was a big find. So
big find. Kudos,
Sean and Jesse.
Absolutely, kudos to them for finding that. But it makes so much more sense. Follow me, pick up your tent, pick up your tabernacle, and follow me during the season of tabernacles. But you also realize how things have been edited and changed and sort of, skewed towards something else. Like we're saying, like the promises, they've sort of been skewed towards something that they absolutely weren't. So, do I believe, again, I really want to see this in the Hebrew, but does Yah hear the prayers of the righteous? Yes, absolutely he does. And I believe according to his goodwill and his purpose, he answers prayer. And very often not in the way we think.
Yeah. Hey, so you just mentioned that. Can we pull up Proverbs 28, verse 9?
Yeah, let me do this.
I think this is the flip side of the coin too.
I lost Proverbs. Here we go. Proverbs, which one?
28, verse 9.
28 and verse 9. Oh man, that's a yeah, that's a revealing scripture, isn't it? Verse 9 says, "He who turns away his ear from hearing the Torah, even his prayer is an abomination."
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
that's a heavy, that's a cinder block dropped on your head, man.
Wow, that's not even a mic drop. You're right. That's a cinder block drop. That's and you know what? I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, it's not even that he says that I'm not going to listen to the prayer of those who don't obey and walk in the Torah. He's saying
It's
your
an
prayer
abomination.
is an abomination.
Yep.
And
I mean,
but go ahead, go finish up your thought.
and you put that in the category that's the same thing he says about eating, pork or even homosexuality or
Yeah.
all these things.
Yeah. Wow.
That's big.
Wow.
That's big.
Yeah,
You know?
that's pretty deep. That's pretty
Yeah.
deep. And I know extremely offensive to, the modern kind of religious way of thinking, but there it is. There it is, right in front of us. And that's not the only place that is said. That's said in a couple of different places. But that's a powerful, and that's exactly what Yeshua is saying. If you abide in me. If
That's
you
right.
don't abide in me, don't ask.
Yeah.
That's literally
John
what it comes down
9:31.
to.
I think this is what John, right, feeds
Let
off
me
of that too.
let me jump
John,
there.
yeah.
Sorry, a little slow here. Here we go. John and chapter 9.
Yeah, verse 31.
All right. Sorry, guys, a little slow on the draw here. But here it is. And we know now this is not Yeshua speaking, obviously. This is the guy that was blind and given sight. But he's stating fact. Or he's stating what was the common understanding, which we now know, looking at what we just looked at in Proverbs, is indeed fact. Verse 31, and we know that Elohim does not hear sinners. But if anyone fears Elohim and does his desire, he hears him. He's basically just quoting the verse that we just looked at, right?
Yep.
So even the guy that was blind for his whole life, boy, isn't that ironic, right?
Yeah.
What an ironic story, right? The guy, nobody in the temple wants to recognize who he is. Nobody wants to acknowledge who he is, and he takes a guy who was blind from his birth, and the guy who is blind figures this out before anybody, before the religious leaders who had sight. If that's not irony, and God uses irony all the time, time. It's one of the ways. Irony, he uses sarcasm.
And I think that's why I always was, before I knew, Yah's truth, I always wondered why Yeshua, spit in the dirt and wiped it on the eyes. And I was like, why? What the heck is that? And he was literally showing them the traditions of man, was saying that even if you spat on the ground, it was work on the Sabbath day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he
even
was,
just
he was totally dissing
so not only was he healing on the Sabbath, which is good, right? But he said, look, I can't. That's awesome. That's awesome.
That's a neat thought that you just brought up, because if you guys look through the gospel accounts, right? Just look through the gospel accounts and look at how many times Yeshua heals, and he does. There's a lot of accounts of it in all four of them, but the majority, not all. There's definitely exceptions. It's not a rule, but there's exceptions to the majority. But a lot of the time, when does he heal? When does he answer prayer?
Yep.
On Sabbath. Man, if that's not an eye
Yeah.
opener, right?
Mm-hmm.
He
Yep.
does it on Sabbath. Here's another one that we hear all the time, Isaiah 54 and verse 17. This should be a really familiar one to people. I'm sure you guys have, this hanging up on your wall. In fact, I think I have this hanging up on on a wall somewhere. Or I just got rid of one. I showed you. I sent you the picture of it.
Oh,
I found something in the house. I'm like, wait a minute, what is that idolic symbol doing on my wall? And it was hanging there. Nobody even recognized it. It was there for forever. And I threw it away.
To it, yeah.
Yeah, I was blind. Yeah. But no, I'm talking about like a couple of weeks ago. We got that stuff out of our house, a long time ago. But it's kind of like that leaven. There's always just that little bit that's kind of like, still there. And you got to be real careful with it. Anyway, here it is. Isaiah chapter 54 and verse 17. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. And every tongue which rises against you in judgment, you shall prove wrong. This is the inheritance of the servants. And that's the key. The servants of Yehovah. And their righteousness from me. Guys, here's everything we read in the New Testament, right? Because it's not New Testament stuff. Where do we get our righteousness from? From him. Yep. How are we in right standing? Because it comes from him by faith. But he's given us a promise here for everyone who is a servant of his, that no weapon formed against you. How many times have we heard this? I've heard it. Like the most, I've said it.
Quoted.
Yeah, we say it all the time, and against somebody at work who's doing something nasty to me, or something on my neighbor or my friend or my government, or no weapon formed against me. I'm sorry, but that's not what it means. You can't just blanket claim this and say, as we do, well, this is the promise for me, because that's not how it's intended. This is a promise to the house of Israel, to people that are the servants of Yah.
Can we fit one more in it? In Psalms?
Yeah, I know. We're almost out of time here. Go ahead.
We do Psalms 145.
Yeah, let me take this off so that
18 and 19. I think people would laugh because I'm sure they experience the same thing. We have like a million scriptures that we don't even get to even touch.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, no, we're even touched. I'm sorry. What'd you say again?
Let's do Psalms 145, 18 and 19.
Way up there in the Psalms. 145 and verse 18 and 19. And let me pop this up. All right, so verse 18 says, Yehovah is near to all who call upon him, to all who call upon him in truth. He does the desire of those who fear him, and he hears their cry and saves them. And that's an awesome promise.
Yeah, that even ties into what the blind man said in John, right? For those who fear him.
Yeah, and again, it's so it's a process. You've got to know truth. You've got to you have to make the first step first things first, and then there's got to be growth, and you've got to walk. But as you walk and you call upon him and you learn his truth and you're walking in truth, yes, Yah does hear your prayers. And yes, there is. As far as I understand the way these promises are worked out, Yah hears your prayers and he will answer them. It may not be the way you like. The answer may be yes. The answer may be no. The answer may be endure. And our response to whatever the answer of Yah is must be like, the three young Hebrew guys, right? Yeah. I know my God can deliver me. I know he can do it. I know he has done it in the past. But even if he doesn't.
Yep, and we saw it also, even we remember what he told Moses. He has compassion on whom he has compassion on, right? Because
Yeah, that's a huge point that we skip right over in modern religion. That honestly, this all comes down to Yah's choice, to his grace, to his compassion.
That's right.
And not everybody gets it.
Again, it's the whole. Mean he doesn't love you. If you're walking in his commands and something still goes wrong, right? Because we know Solomon tells us, right? You read through Ecclesiastes, and we're in a flesh suit, man. We're gonna experience lots of bad things, man. It's it rains on the just and the unjust.
It does. So we're kind of at a time. We're a minute or two over, but so I guess the summary of all of this in my mind is, there are promises. Absolutely, there are promises, and it's a good thing. You should read them, you should learn them, you should understand them. And as you read the Torah, you will. As you obey the instructions, you will. As you follow Yeshua's example, you will. And Yah will hear your prayer, and he will answer. It's not the way we've been told, though. This is not a blanket promise to anybody who says that they believe and is walking in unrighteousness and just, it's not a genie. He's not a genie. It's not a bottle.
That's right.
You don't rub it three times and get your wishes. That's just not the way this thing works. But the promises are for those who are walking with him and walking in him.
Yep.
All right, brother.
Amen. Just wanted to encourage everyone, not only do the Torah portion, that's great. The reason why I say that only because if you don't know it, it's the best way to learn it. But just spend time in Yah's word. And when you do, teach it to your children, because it's our job, it's our responsibility. We're accountable for what goes into their eye gate and their ear gate. So let's teach them Yah's word and instill that faith in their heart. Amen.
Yeah, you know what? You just popped in my mind another one of those promises we hear all the time. Raise your child up in the way that he should go, and when they're older, they will not depart from it. And look throughout modern Christendom. That's not happening.
No.
In fact, the exact opposite of that is what's happening. Because what that promise is saying is what you just quoted from Deuteronomy: raise your child up in walking in obedience to Yah's instruction.
That's right.
Don't do that. It does. Yeah, you could raise your kids to be good kids, and do moral things, but we're talking about a spiritual issue. Their understanding of who Yah is, and look at what is happening to an entire generation.
Just because they go to church doesn't mean anything, right? Because that's what we hear, right?
That's what we think. That's how we've cataloged that promise. I brought them to church. I brought them to youth group. We told them we told them about Jesus. We celebrated Christmas. We did Easter. We did all of those things. And my kid went to college, and his Marxist professors just turned him all the way around. And now I don't even recognize them. No, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it, because that's happening all over the country, all over the world. That's happening, because that's not what the promise says. That's not what the promise is. So anyway, good catch. Good verse. Good. All right, brother, man, I love you.
I love you too, man. Shabbat shalom. Love everyone. Don't forget to hit that like button.
Yep, smash that like button.
Smash that like button.
All right,
love
brother.
You.
Shalom, man.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I appreciate that. Don't forget, as brother said, to smash that like button. Check us out tomorrow morning now the feast days are actually right upon us. They're right around the corner. So we're going to do some messages about the Moedim, about the feast days. So join us tomorrow at 10:45. And stay safe. Those people in Louisiana, hunker down. Keep those people in prayer. Keep our soldiers, the families, all of that. So much going on around our world. We've got a lot to pray for. So with that, guys, enjoy the rest of your day. Shabbat shalom to everybody.